You've had Wendy's Nuggs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Wendy's new Saucy Nuggs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm, or the hot versions of all those three. Or if you're a real heat seeker, try the spicy ghost pepper. I dare ya. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you have never nugged before for a whole new way to nug. It's got to be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's. Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3. We are, of course, presented by Wendy's. It is, of course, a Wendy's Saucy Take Wednesday. I have been in the kitchen cooking up saucy takes. I will deliver those to you, Ari. You will judge them later in the show. How are we doing, Ari?
Good, and I have zero idea where you're going with these 3 takes. Like sometimes we have preliminary discussions on just like what the topic might be. I am completely blind, which means that I'm primed and ready to receive them.
Well, I will throw a little tease your way because we have a great interview with Cole Cubelic, who was on the call for that Alabama Vanderbilt game last week and who breaks down everything in the SEC so well every single week. And he's going to tell us about Alabama, about Vandy, about Red River. But I'll give you a little hint on the saucy takes. There's one from the Big 12. There's one from the Big 10. And there's one about an SEC matchup that I think is huge that I don't think we've talked about enough this week. So there's your preview.
Okay.
But first, we got to talk to Cole about what Alabama does from here. Can Vandy keep this going? And what happens in Dallas? Here's Cole Cubelic. Love him from the SEC Network, Mac and Cube, the Cube Show, your best post-game breakdown podcast that isn't ours. Well, Cube, how we doing?
Yeah, we don't debate places to eat on Cube Show, so it's not quite as entertaining. Which before we get going, how you can be okay with Domino's cheesy bread, which I am, and I backed up Ari on this. And I told Andy that I'm with him. I'm 100% for it. I like it. I don't lie to people about it. I don't try to pretend like I'm too good for that. But then be as much of a Tex-Mex snob as Ari is at the same time. I don't know how that works. But either way, here we go.
The only thing I can care about if we were going to continue going on with this interview is that you think Domino's cheesy bread is good. You do, right?
I love it.
Then we can proceed.
But whatever the one that comes in the black box, like the deep pan, whatever that thing is, like I'm all for that one too. Like I don't care if people tell me Domino's is terrible. I actually had a buddy that used to produce my show in Huntsville that worked there, and he's like, "I promise you don't want that." And I was like, "Don't care. It's good. I like it."
You got little kids, Cole. I know the feeling of when that $6.99 menu calls. And you just click a couple things and it shows up at the house and the kids are fed and happy. Like
little dough balls, whatever those are called. They call them puffies. I don't know what they're called. They love those things. So yeah, I was with you there. And then you had to go food snob on Tex-Mex. And I don't. Now listen, I love what I call it dirty Mexican, like OG Mexican. I'm all for it. It's definitely better, but Tex-Mex has its place. And just don't feel like as a fellow fat guy, you should be able to put that down.
Well, we're going to get you and the kids hooked on Saucy Nuggs next, Cole. That's our goal. The Wendy Saucy Nuggs are they're fueling the show this year. But we got to talk about this game that you were just at, because when you walk into Vanderbilt Stadium, what percentage in your mind was the thought that you're going to be watching Vanderbilt beat Alabama?
Maybe 5-10%. I did think there was a path to competitiveness and a path to being a problem. I had New Mexico State last year, so I knew what Diego Pavia was. I knew what that offense was. I knew what Eli Stowers was. I knew how Tim Beck called it, and I was really impressed with watching them last year. That was before the Auburn game, and I tried to warn people. I said, now listen, this kid's a bulldog. And this offense is really hard to defend. It has answers for everything. It is multiple on every snap. And this kid is just a freaking warrior. And it's one of the things that Greg and I have tried to explain to people this week on our show in Birmingham is that we forget how many snaps this young man has in this offense. And so knowing that against a defense that is under a new scheme, new structure, we want to pretend like that's not real. But in every other instance, it'd be like, oh, well, the system changed. Or it's a new scheme, it's new terminology, but now it's just also supposed to work to perfection. So I thought offensively they would have a chance to move the ball a bit. Defense, I wasn't really sure. But I also thought Alabama was going to go right at them and would come out and just essentially do some of what Vanderbilt did to Alabama, play ball control. Alabama ran the ball on consecutive plays 4 times in that game. 4 back-to-back runs. Like, to me, that's inexcusable. And I had our stats guy look it up in the game. It was, I think, late third, early fourth quarter. And Greg Campbell, I said, you got to look this up. And at that point, it was 3. And he goes, oh, and I got one better for you. 2 of them have been touchdowns. So because of that, I didn't think Vanderbilt's defense had a great chance. But then when you go 42 to 17 minutes time of possession, like, yeah, that changes things.
Well, I heard you on Cube Show talking about this because people say, oh, how come this school didn't get Diego Pavia? He was going with Jerry Kill and Tim Beck where they were going. So how big of a coup was it for Clark Lee to get those guys and get all of this together? Eli Stowers, you mentioned, who, by the way, originally a QB signee at Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big time QB signee. Like, he was highly rated. And I guess you have to hear them talk about each other. Like, you have to hear Jerry talk about Diego talk about Jerry, and Tim talk about Diego, vice versa. All the, like, that triangle of affection is real. And Diego's got a chip on his shoulder, man. Like, he's not afraid to tell you. Like, we asked him, how did it feel when he wanted to go to New Mexico, and they didn't offer him, they didn't recruit him. And Tom asked him how that felt. And, what did you think about that? And he's like, I guess they didn't want to F and win. And so he kind of still carries that. Well, Jerry's the one that went and got him later after he got to New Mexico State out of junior college, and it was his only offer there. So, like, he would die for Jerry Kill. Like, he really would. And so, like, I saw these people on Sunday, and it was like, oh, Auburn could have had Diego Pavia for a Snickers bar and $2. And this team could have had Diego Pavia. I'm like, not without Jerry Kill and Tim Beck, they couldn't have. Because I think his loyalty to them was at a place that just a lot of people don't understand. And then, 2, when you just add to the familiarity with the system and how he can manipulate it, I think once the opportunity presented itself to be with them somewhere else, he wasn't even considering anything.
Cole, when you were watching this game, with the way that upset bids tend to go, if a team is up early and everyone turns the channel to watch the game, and then the heavy favorite punches back or gets back in or takes a lead the way that Alabama did, getting within 2 points there in the third quarter. When that was happening, did you feel like Vanderbilt was going to be able to keep punching back the way that they did?
I have to educate you on my upbringing a little bit, Ari. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. I was not an Auburn or an Alabama fan. And then obviously playing at Auburn. I used to go to games at Legion Field, like Bama, Louisiana Tech, Bama, Tennessee, just here big games. But there was this phrase that floated around the Magic City quite often, and it was referenced as Bama Magic a lot of times. And that may be David Palmer returning a punt for a touchdown. That may be Antonio Langham, a pick 6, or whatever. And I think we all know inherently, like, that it's not real, but it was just, something always seemed to happen. And not necessarily a break, like a bad call or anything. It's just, they always had a guy that would make a play. And sometimes maybe it was a break, like a call or whatever. And so that's kind of in my DNA a little bit. Like, I grew up with people saying that and talking about that, and then kind of witnessing it, seeing it. Like, I was at the Louisiana Tech game in 1992 at Legion Field, and Chris Donnelly returned a touchdown late in that game. Essentially, it was like 13-6, I think. Like, they might not have won that game if he doesn't do that. So I just kind of grew up seeing that. So I think I always have it deep down inside in me that just, like, they're going to make a play. They're going to figure it out. Like, Julio Jones is going to catch a hitch and make a guy miss and go the distance. Like, whatever. So, yeah, once Alabama cut it to 2, I think it's very difficult to still believe, Ari, that this is probably going to happen. I mean, with what Vandy did early, you're like, all right, can they keep doing what they're doing offensively and continue to be able to make this happen this way? Because Alabama's going to adjust and there's going to be explosive plays. It's can they weather that storm when it comes and keep going? And I'll give Tim Beck and Vanderbilt credit. They went and made the extra plays when they needed to, because a lot of teams would have just said inside zone, run clock, punt. Let's just hang on by a thread and pray to God we get out of here. They didn't do that. They ran bootlegs, like they threw the ball. They ran option plays, and I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, they ain't messing around. Like they're trying to go take this game, and that's why I tried to emphasize on the broadcast late, and then on my podcast also, this game was not given. This was not a gift. This was not a fluke. And I heard you guys talking about it too. You guys spelled it out very well. Vanderbilt won this football game. Like they took this game, and they deserve all the credit for doing that.
So can they keep taking them is my question, because given the way we saw them beat Alabama, I'm looking at the rest of the schedule, and maybe Texas is a different story, but they just beat Alabama. But Kentucky, Auburn, South Carolina, LSU, like all of those teams feel like if you play that way, you're going to beat them too.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think that goes back to what we talked about with Diego, reps in the system. And he's got those. Like he is a freaking wizard. Like he has real magic. I call it manipulating that offense. I don't know what other people would call it, but like he just knows how to run it. And even though a lot of it, Andy, was execution and the right read, what I feel like Tim Beck did so well in this game, and I tried to spell it out while we were calling it, because Tom kept asking me, what's wrong with Alabama's defense? What is wrong with, and he's doing his job. He wants me to explain to the viewer, like, what is happening? And to me, what I was watching, it wasn't what was wrong, it was what was right. And he kept running that little inside zone read to the backside at a pistol, and everybody's just like, man, that's stubborn. But what he's doing is seeing how they're playing him on that drive, because Kane had to change it up. And so when he saw, oh, they're crashing, okay, cool. Well, let's get the jet sweep going, because we're gonna have numbers on the perimeter, and we'll go, oh, they're playing it upfield. Guess what? Here comes the shovel pass to Stowers that we haven't run all year, and that thing's going to get going. So they set them up extremely well. If they can be that consistent with that kind of a plan and execution and sticking to it, the Texas defense will be a handful, and then stopping the Texas's offense will be tough, but they can play with any team on the schedule. And see, people point to that Georgia State game like, oh, they lost to Georgia State. Well, they got sacked on like the second or third play of the game, gave the ball back. Diego had a bad pitch later in the game, gave it away also. Like, that was a sloppy game. If they're sloppy against any of those teams on their schedule, they can lose. If they don't turn it over and they possess the ball and they go 12 of 16 on third down, hell, they can beat any of those teams on their schedule.
Cole, what's next for Alabama from your perspective, and how, can Kalen DeBoer get this thing back on track?
A couple of things that I saw and that I have seen watching it a couple times again. I still cannot fathom why you don't go into that game. And nothing against Vanderbilt's personnel on defense, but they're not a super heavy, dominant front. And you got Tyler Booker, who I think is the best offensive lineman, period, in college football. Parker Brailsford's been playing great this year. Proctor's finally getting it going. You struggle a little bit at right guard. Right tackle's been up and down, but you also have a 260-pound tight end that benches 500 pounds. You have another 270-pound tight end that knows how to mash people. That needs to be more part of the game plan, and I think more part of the personality. We didn't see it until Wisconsin. That game was over because the backup quarterback was in, so they kind of felt like they could do that, but I would want to lead with that a little bit more. Oh, by the way, your quarterback runs 23.5 miles an hour and can run over people. So you add that into the mix, and it's more difficult to defend that part of who you can be. It just felt to me like every run play that was for a yard or two, it was automatic, like hit the eject button, go 4 wide, and turn Milroe loose again. And I don't think that formula can win a lot, because teams are going to do what Vanderbilt tried to do and say, we're going to play back, we're going to play off. You can have all the intermediate stuff, and you can have every hitch and every crosser. You can run your mesh concept, and that's fine. But we're not going to let Ryan Williams get us 5 times in this game. We're not going to let Jeremy Bernard get us 3 times in this game. And that's going to be difficult to consistently make those go, specifically when you don't touch the ball, because their best players are on offense. Ryan Williams, Jalen Milroe, Tyler Booker, Jam Miller, Jeremy Bernard, those are their best players. And they have to be included in the game plan and on the field to go help you win. I think that has to happen. And Ari, I didn't see this at first. And when Roman and I were taping our show in Charlotte, he showed me one play from an Alabama defender. And it was Eli Stowers on a little out route on third down. He catches the ball at about 4 yards. He needs 6 for the first down. Red Morgan's kind of trying to drag him to the ground, and he's grinding. And another Alabama defender's coming over, and he kind of jogs and pulls up, and Stowers pulls ahead and gets first down yardage. And Roman said, that's what pisses me off. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I didn't notice that, but I get it. And he said that happened a lot. And I was like, all right. So I'm on the plane ride home. I'm watching it again, and I was like, oh, man, 13 did that. 11 did that. 0 did that. Like, wow, this is happening a lot. You guys know just like I do. That's usually a group of trained killers, not even silent assassins, like out in the open assassins that are headhunting in a totally legal way. And it's not that right now. That has to change because one guy making one tackle, it has to be the team making tackles.
Well, and that's kind of a hallmark of Saban smart tree defenses. Like, they bring you down and they don't let you get extra yards.
Right.
It separates us. Cole, I want to switch to another game. Red River coming up. Ari and I have argued about this a bunch this week. And it's one of those things where, like, the favorite is 6-8-1 against the spread the last 15 meetings. Weird things happen in this game. I'm curious from your perspective, what would Oklahoma's path to victory be in this game?
First off, I want to give both of you credit. This was an awesome discussion. I think it was in Monday's show because, Andy, you made great points about the history of this game, which I fall victim to many times. Ari, you made great points about I got to pick based on the teams. I can't pick because of, the stands are split, crimson and orange, burnt orange. Like, that doesn't matter. But it does matter sometimes. I think the differential in talent here is enough to where I'll overcome historically what has happened. First and foremost, the offense for Oklahoma has to change. It has to be built around the talents of the quarterback and what's available to the team. Tennessee game, it was all compressed. It was tight ends and bunch formations close to the line of scrimmage. And my immediate thought was, you have this offensive line that's banged up, that's not good right now, and a young quarterback who's just entered the game. Get those people away from the football. I don't want them near my guy. Get them away from me. Like, let him breathe a little bit, and let's get some stuff going. And then you get inside the 10, and it's like, here come the read plays. Here come the jet motions. Where was that between the 20s with that guy? If they can build the offense that way around him and his talents, because Ari's right, it's not going to be an 80-yard pass at the end of the game to win this game. First off, that's a great defense, but they're not going to stop Texas that many times. They're not. This Texas offense is too explosive with high percentage plays and an elite game caller. And their defense is pretty damn good. So the path is a design offensively that maybe Texas has not seen a lot of, which that has been negated this year because of the iPads. And that's a conversation for another day. But the iPads have been massive for teams this year. To be able to fool the defense some, allow your quarterback to be athletic, at least Deion Burks has to be back. Has to be. Because he needs some quick, high-percentage throws that can go the distance. And then your takeover guys need to be your takeover guys. Danny Stutzman needs to be Danny Stutzman. Billy Bowman needs to be Billy Bowman. And go out there and make plays because whether it's Roy Williams, Superman, or whatever, Rocky Kalmus, this is the game those guys make those plays. And those Oklahoma guys have to make those plays in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I have a difficult time with the game because Andy is right. Where if you go back and look, he even pulled today the spreads of this game for the past 15 years, and the favorite, I think,
the higher the spread, the weirder it gets.
The higher the spread, the weirder the game has been. So, that said, from a personnel standpoint, I don't know how to go about it. But what has your take been on Michael Hawkins in what you've watched of him so far, and the whole quarterback situation they have going on in Norman?
Well, quickly, Ari, like side note, it's the same with the Iron Bowl. People every year, they're like, competitive every year. I'm like, I've been a part of a couple blowouts. And like the better team normally wins that game. Like it just home field advantage is big, but usually the better team wins. That's just what it is.
The thing I have a hardest time with, Cole, is that you can't analyze a football game by just saying, "Oh, voodoo is going to happen." Like, you know, like you have to look at
cowboy. Like, yeah,
who's on the field and who's playing the game. But you know, that said, I wouldn't be betting a large sum of money that Oklahoma covers that because it has gone off the rails. But with the quarterback situation there, like, have you been impressed with Michael Hawkins so far? And when you see a program make such a wholesale change to maybe not just the quarterback position, but the direction of the program in general, like going into a game like this, like what's the whole process for you to go through that?
It took me by surprise a little bit that they made the change when they did, because I honestly, when they did that in the Tennessee game, I didn't really see a path for them to win that game, no matter who was at quarterback. But we were there for the Houston game, and I had multiple people on that staff kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, nod, nod, like this backup quarterback, you should probably know his name and you should probably start paying real attention to him. And I'm like, hold on, like the incumbent is here. The next guy in line is here. Like the next Baker, Bradford, Kyler, like Jason White. Like this is the guy. We've been waiting to watch him be the full-time guy. And they're like, no, just know who he is and pay attention. So I watched him a little closer in warm-ups. And then I asked some of the Oklahoma guys that I know about him. And I hear about what he did in fall practice. And you start thinking, okay. And then when he was put in a very, let's just say, bad situation, like that, I hate to say fair, but that's not one where you really expect the guy to come in and just magically figure things out. That's a tough spot to be in at that age, where the game was, where your team is, down receivers, down offensive. Offense hasn't really been going. I thought he showed toughness. I thought he showed grit. He stuck with plays, which normally you would expect a freshman to just bail out and either throw the ball or run right away. And the offense at that point wasn't really designed to his strengths. And I said early in the season, I said, Oklahoma's got a Jackson Arnold problem because all the quick stuff, it was really good, really good. If it was like get out of the mesh, throw the ball, it was clean, it was crisp. He had good tempo on the ball, good velocity. When he was asked to run, he's got good wheels, he can do it. Once it got past that, it almost always looked shaky. And I think with Hawkins, you have a guy that maybe is a little more comfortable doing those things. I've been really impressed with him. But no matter what, the offense is going to have to be geared a little bit heavier towards his skill set and how he can hurt you and break you down. And being down offensive linemen and being down receivers, that is not throwing the ball 40 times in a game. And it damn sure isn't compressing a bunch of things close to the football. You got to get those things away and utilize his athleticism.
So, Cole, we got to ask it now. Your broadcast team, before we let you go, your broadcast team has been shaken up a bit because Jordan Rogers, who's normally in the booth with Tom Hart, has been filling in for Jesse Palmer, who is making Ari happy by filming The Bachelor.
Big fan of The Bachelor, Cole.
Which puts you in the booth. Cole, I'm curious, like when you're in the booth, is it worse because you don't get to eat anything in the third quarter? Or can you have stuff delivered to the booth too?
Yeah, Big Cat was pissed that I'm in the booth because he is always waiting for me to either pet an animal or eat something weird on the sideline late in the game. And most people have asked me a little bit of a different question. It's been, are you mad you didn't get to essentially live in that mayhem after the game with not only Diego, but the entire Pavia family in Clarkley and the Gatorade bath and whatever, which Alyssa did a great job. And that would have been cool. That would have been fun.
Well, and Alyssa always eats something on the sideline too. So like you two are simpatico there.
I think if this would have been one of those 4 interception, 2 fumble, like kick return, pick 6 type, like a fluky upset, it would have been maybe a little more difficult. But because of how I felt like I was able to talk about this plan and how it played out and how sticking to the plan was the reason they were winning this game, I enjoyed being upstairs a little bit more because I felt like a lot of what was happening was kind of in my wheelhouse, and I was able to describe that and talk about that.
You got a sense for that too. It was great.
Well, I have said you guys are the best broadcast team in college football. I stand by that. And the more big games that the whole country gets to see, where they get to see you guys, God bless it. Cole, thank you so much.
Really appreciate you being here, Cole. It's a pleasure talking to you.
It's more pleasure talking to you, Ari. It's our first time on the same show.
Hopefully one of many.
I've had so many things that just sitting there waiting to say that I haven't been able to get out, that I just yell. Most people yell at their TVs during games. I yell at my phone during you guys' show. So
what's so funny, Cole, is that most of the time when people say that to me, it's always because I said something about food that made them angry. So it makes me feel good that you came out firing with the Dominoes and the Tex-Mex stuff, because like that's the stuff that's important. That's
old
the
stuff. That's old stuff. Trust me. You have some football takes that piss me off too, but that's all right. That's
all right. We'll get into it another time, hopefully.
We're allowed to have different football opinions. Food opinions, no. It's get on board or get out.
Yeah.
We are going to have Ari and Cole sit down for a meal and probably record the whole thing. We're going to make that happen, Ari. Ari, you're muted. Still muted. That's okay. While Ari figures out why his microphone's not working, we're going to talk about Huel, which is what I had for breakfast this morning. And it is the world's #1 complete nutrition brand. So this bottle right here, 35 grams of protein, 7 grams of fiber, 27 vitamins and minerals. I know exactly what I'm putting into my body as I get ready for my day. That's Huel. Huel is trusted by millions of people looking to fuel their days with convenient, complete nutrition. Try it for yourself with my exclusive offer for you. 15% off with the code STAPLES at Huel.com. That's Huel.com. You grab it for breakfast. You can take it with you to work for lunch. You know exactly what's going in. The input is there. You're going to get the best output. 15% off with the code STAPLES. That's Huel.com, Huel.com. All right, Ari, you ready to talk to us now?
Can you hear me now?
Woo! There you are.
I wasn't muted. I think that StreamYard had an issue, but here we are. We're good.
All right. Well, I'm glad we're back. Yeah, we're going to put you and Cole together at a table and just let you argue. We'll set up cameras. Like we can do a duel, like a home and home, our show, Cube show. Yeah. It'll be tremendous.
I mean, I don't want to get into a football argument with that guy. He knows ball. But if he wants to go into the depths of the annals of food, I think I can take him. So, but yeah, it was awesome to have him on. I thought he was awesome. And thanks again, Cole, for being here. We're gonna do it again.
Absolutely. Goat Dog in the chat. Cube and Stinch. That's Matt Stinchcomb, former Georgia offensive lineman, college football Hall of Famer, by the way. Matt Stinchcomb, poster children for offensive linemen with great takes. Offensive linemen are the smartest, best looking people in the world. Have I not explained this to everybody enough times? Like Cole is one of the smartest football people you will ever meet, and Stinch absolutely too. We need to have him on. Stench, by the way, has a dead-on Mac Brown impression, a perfect Steve Spurrier impression, a perfect Kirby Smart impression. It's like you think you are listening to Kirby Smart when you hear they played together.
We have to have him on the show just to do the impersonations because I'm a sucker for good impersonations. I think it's great.
He gets a little worried about it sometimes because he doesn't want to, offend anybody. But we'll make it happen with. He'll at least do Kirby because Kirby's not afraid of. Because he did, again, he played with Kirby, probably knocked Kirby through the center of the earth a few times, blocking out after he blocked his initial guy and then just was trying to find somebody else to clean up at practice. So we'll talk about that. But let's first talk about the end of an era. The worst contract in American sports is no longer. The NCAA is eliminating the national letter of intent. It is going away. Now, we knew it was going away. This was part of the House settlement. So we knew if the House settlement got approved, which it was preliminarily approved this week, that the national letter of intent would be going away. But it is the end of an era. They haven't been faxing it for a while, Ari, but we still always imagine the fax machines on National Signing Day. It is somewhat... sad's probably not the right word for it, but like it's become such a part of our lexicon. Like he signed his letter of intent. Well, now we can't say that anymore. He signed his financial aid agreement. Well, you can sign a lot of financial aid agreements. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to that school. So That's it for the national letter of intent, though. End of an era.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like when the DVD player stopped being used. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I have a lot of affection for it. Still kind of wish I had them. But yeah, it kind of seems just like a necessary thing because it was really just a one-sided deal there.
Yeah, it was. So here's the deal. For those who don't remember, like the national letter of intent came about because different conferences had different signing days. And if you sign like the Big Eight and the Southwest Conference is where a lot of this went haywire, because Southwest Conference would have its signing day and the Big Eight schools would come in and sign guys who had signed with Southwest Conference schools. Because like let's say you signed with TCU or Baylor and you're in the Southwest Conference, that means you couldn't sign with anybody or you couldn't be recruited by anybody else from the Southwest Conference, but it didn't stop you from being recruited by somebody in the Big Eight. And so they decided to standardize that where everybody would sign this one letter. It meant that nobody else could recruit you. Well, that sounds dear players, we're doing you a favor by having you sign this thing that gives away the only leverage you have. But they didn't actually back it up on the other side. Like, remember, there was that time a few years ago when LSU oversigned and like two guys are like, oops, we don't have scholarships for you. Oh, well, guess you have to go somewhere else. One guy went to Kentucky. But yeah, it never did actually protect the players. It always protected the schools. And then in recent years, it didn't even protect the schools, because in recent years, once they changed all the transfer rules, you could just leave. And the letter of intent, which was supposed to keep you in place for a year, well, the school would just release you from it. They weren't going to enforce it. So it didn't really need to exist anymore, much like the DVD player. Although, Ari, I did see on Twitter, somebody was selling Titanic DVDs for $16.71. So,
I mean, I guess if you're going to have a
value.
DVD, that'd be the one to have, right? Paint me like one of your French girls. You know what I thought of when I thought of the National Signing Day?
Please clip that.
Was the Peyton Bowen fiasco just even 2 years ago, and now he's like one of the best players in the biggest game of the weekend, or one of the bigger games of the weekend, and it was just like he signed a letter of intent, but I think misdated it or forget to sign it. There was a clerical error, which then allowed him to keep his recruitment open. Did not end up at Oregon. Now is at Oklahoma and is a very important piece of that team. But like, it's just like every single time we take a step towards like rationality and reason, we are removing the crazy twists and stories that happen that make college football. Like, there's no NFL player that didn't wind up with a team because he misdated his contract. You know what I mean? Like,
how about Alex Collins' mom stealing the letter of intent?
Yeah, right. Like, just the things that went on during the national letter of intent era, just the last second grab ass that we had on that day.
Jonathan Colon was an offensive lineman. He was a big time recruit out of Miami. He sent 2 letters of intent. He sent one to Florida and one to Miami. And they eventually decided he was going to Florida because he sent that one first.
I mean, did you even remember like last year when we were all just sitting on Twitter, like twiddling our thumbs, waiting to see if Jeremiah Smith was going to send one to Miami or Ohio State? It's just like, yeah. I don't know what the new system is going to look like, but I will miss the craziness.
Or the fun one where somebody kept telling recruiting reporters that DJ Lagway was considering USC, a last second charge from USC, when we all knew that he'd sent his letter of intent to Florida at 7 a.m. Central Time.
Yeah.
But nobody would say it because didn't want to spoil his moment when he announced. So
yeah. There was some last second DJ Lagway drama that just wasn't true. So yeah. I'll miss all that.
Yeah. Well, don't worry. There'll be more weird drama. I mean, I don't know. Alex Collins' mom stealing the letter of intent, or like the day of the portal opening bomb that Kyle McCord's leaving Ohio State. Like, I remember Nakos was about to break that story, and he texted me. He's like, "You're not going to believe what I'm about to put out." And it's the morning of that Monday. I'm sitting like with my coffee, about to go into the studio in our home office in Nashville, and I look at that, I'm like, oh my God. So I think we're gonna get our own share of craziness, just in a little bit different way.
I just think that there is a distinction between jaw-dropping, shocking story and the weirdness of how we got to that story, right?
True.
So like the more you piece together these steps that make it less likely that weird things happen. I'm not saying there isn't going to be interesting stories. It's college football. It's going to be great no matter what. But like, I just think like the intricacies and the idiosyncrasies of what make college football just bizarre. We're stripping away some of the paths to get there, but I'm assuming that college football will still be the kid that the mom screams out, "Why can't you just be normal?"
Exactly. It's gonna stay weird. Now we still have we may have mom screaming at kids still. It just may work out differently.
Andy, I don't know how much did your
Landon
wife?
Collins was the other one. Remember Landon Collins' mom when he went to Alabama was like just freaked out because she wanted him to go to LSU.
Yeah, wasn't there? Who was the one at the Army game where they were interviewing the mom? I can't remember.
That was Landon Collins. That was.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but the thing that I wanted to ask you was like, do you ever? I don't know how interested in college football your wife is, but like my wife, being a good wife, is always interested in me, so she'll ask questions of like, what are you working on today, or what happened today? And I will find myself in situations where I'm in a kitchen with a woman who doesn't watch or care about the sport at all, trying to explain why something that crazy happened in college football is a big deal, and she'll just be like, I'll be married to you for another 50 years and I'll never understand what the hell you do with your days. like trying to explain to somebody who doesn't love college football or pay attention to college football. It's like the Peyton Bowen story. Like, try to imagine that.
This has also been their problem in court. Like when they're trying to explain this stuff to a judge, they're like, this is totally normal. And it's just like, no, it's not. None of this is normal.
This is not normal. Yeah.
David in the chat wants to explain the new process. So the new process is actually, it's not a change because the players have been doing this all along. You can sign a financial aid agreement with a school, and you can really do that. I believe you can do that anytime. I have to check the dates on this, but I think you can do it anytime after September 1st of your senior year. And it basically says the school agrees to give you a scholarship. Now, it's not exclusive. You can sign multiple financial aid agreements, and then you go to the school you're going to go to. And so it doesn't end the recruitment. Now, I think we're ultimately headed toward some contracts.
Yeah.
But that's still a little off in the distance where you will just sign and that'll be that. But what I think will actually happen, Ari, that will tell us that this person's going to this school is they'll announce they've signed an NIL deal with the school. Because remember, the schools can now pay them directly.
But what's the day? Let's just be clear about this. The day that you can stop worrying that the person that you're obsessed with going to your school is not going to go to your school.
When they set foot on campus, which is what it's really been from a practical standpoint for the past 2 or 3 years. When they arrive on campus and go to class, that would be
because when you think about it,
at this point,
everything I just said about like the craziness is like, I mean, you might actually have a different route here to craziness of like, what are we going to be doing? Like waiting outside of the football buildings to see if someone shows up. Like, cause we've been doing
that for,
I know, but I'm saying, how local beats cover their teams, right?
Yeah.
Like the NIL or not the NIL, the NLI was a way of knowing that there was a binding agreement that person was coming to your school without having, I mean, there's no bones about it. When you sign that piece of paper, that's what it meant. But like now,
until about 2 years ago, yeah,
and then we're gonna have to scout out the bus station and stuff like.
Well, that's what. Now, look, people have been there on move-in day for 20 years. Team site reporters have been doing that for 20 years. But I'll give you an example. The one that really popped and the one where you really knew things were kind of different was when Jaden Rashada didn't show up at Florida.
Mm-hmm.
He had signed a letter of intent, but he just didn't show up. You knew they would release him from that if it didn't work out, and they did. So, yeah, we're gonna see that, and I do think when they announce that the guys signed the NIL deal with the school is going to be now when we know, okay,
Andy, which
that's
big time player? There was a big time player, a 5-star somewhere like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, who didn't have an announcement ceremony, didn't post anything on his Twitter, didn't tell anybody. And the way that the school found out that they got him was when he showed up on the first day. And I'm trying to remember which player it was. But
yeah, I'm blanking on that one too.
Yeah. But
I thought you were going to talk about Roquan Smith, who refused to sign a letter of intent.
I think JT Tuimoloau did that. I think it was him. But like, or was going to do that. But that's going to be the norm now. That is going to be some crazy, flip. Could you imagine, like, if you're a Florida fan and you think you have a player who's going to come change your program, and that guy just shows up in Morgantown? Like, I mean, it's just like it's going to be fun.
It's going to be wild. It's going to be wild. You know what's going to be wild, Ari? The Oregon-Ohio State game.
Mm-hmm.
We got to talk about that. Let's do our PrizePicks preview of the Oregon-Ohio State game. So the PrizePicks board has been populated with some of the big games this week. PrizePicks, download that app, play $5, get $50 instantly using the code STAPLES. And really, you can play $5 and get $50 if you do a 4-square play and you win. But if you use that code STAPLES, you don't have to even win the 4-square play. But we got a game here in Eugene, and some of these numbers are very interesting. We'll start with Will Howard, 244.5 passing yards. So if Will Howard throws for around 250 yards, Ari, are we to assume that this was a balanced Ohio State performance and that the running game contributed a solid 150, 200 yards as well?
Yeah, I would think so. I don't know that I even like the more than there, because I think Ohio State's going to do a very good job of running the football, and I don't know that Oregon's going to allow very many huge plays through the air. So I think that's exactly where I would have anticipated it being, and if he is in the 240, 50, 60 range, your hope, if you're an Ohio State fan, is that they ran for 150 or almost 200 yards on top of it. And then that would probably, in my opinion, if they get to, 200, 250, 250, probably result in a win or a pretty comfortable win.
Let me give you a really interesting one. So Jordan James, the Oregon running back, his number is 77.5 rushing yards. He is, he's had more than that in every game this year. His lowest rushing total is 86 against Oregon State. But he had 166 yards against Michigan State. This is the guy, if Oregon gets him going, Oregon's going to win this game. If he has a 100-yard or 125-yard rushing day, I think there's a really good chance Oregon wins this game, because it means they are moving the ball on the ground, but also probably they're breaking some tackles, which means when they catch the ball, they might be breaking some tackles too. So that's the number I'd watch. And again, I will point out, so if you go to PrizePicks, you click on a square, they will show you the last 5 games for that person in that category. And I think it's really interesting with Jordan James because they've only played 5 games. Every one of them, he's rushed for more than this particular total. Now, none of them have been against Ohio State's defense. And I think that's the key distinction here for both of these teams, because Oregon has not played a defense like this. Now, they've played a superstar offensive player in Ashton Jeanty. I don't think they've played multiple superstar offensive players like Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, but they have played a superstar offensive player in Ashton Jeanty. They have not played a defense like this. Meanwhile, Ohio State has not played anything like this.
Yeah, and that's the thing that you have to fear coming into it, is that you have a sense of what you think Ohio State probably is, but you have no proof, no testimony or nothing to show that they're able to exist in a high-powered game like this. Now, their players would probably be a pretty good hint that they can, but Oregon is going to be in a completely different battle for Ohio State, a team that hasn't really had to break a sweat this year. And we're going to find out a lot about both of these teams, obviously, when they play each other.
I cannot wait. Cannot wait. This is the first time we've gotten to see what we think is an Ohio State super team play against elite competition. I'm so excited. Ari, it's time for my Wendy's Sauciest takes. You have to decide which is the sauciest take of these 3. I'm going to stay in Eugene. Because one of my takes is regarding this game.
Okay.
The Oregon-Ohio State game will be the only meeting between those two teams this year.
That's pretty saucy. Because in the Big Ten, it's not like the SEC, because the SEC has Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. There are a lot of options in the SEC for which teams you think can actually go run the table. So by saying it in the Big Ten, I think that you're dismissing, not dismissing. You have to acknowledge that the two top teams in the Big Ten are Ohio State and Oregon. There's no debating that, right? So by saying what you're saying, you think that Indiana is going to be in the Big Ten championship game? Is that basically what your take is there?
Penn State?
Yeah, we are.
Penn State?
Yeah, we're forgetting Penn State.
Yeah. So if Penn State goes and blows
Purposefully.
USC's doors off this weekend, now Penn State plays Ohio State. But that's the thing. This is where there's a couple ways you can go with this. If Oregon beats Ohio State, then it means Penn State maybe can beat Ohio State too. If Ohio State beats Oregon, then it opens the possibility of a one-loss Penn State or a one-loss Ohio State. I mean, a one-loss Indiana in there.
You're right. Penn State should be in there too. I was wrong. That was stupid. Because in my head, Penn State had to play Oregon too, and they don't. So like they have the same pathway to get to the Big Ten championship game as Indiana does. So yeah, okay. But I do think that when you look at the Big Ten, the two best teams in the conference are more clearly identifiable than they are in the SEC, right? Like I have no idea who the SEC championship game is going to feature.
I don't know how clear it is because I don't know where Penn State, like I feel like Ohio State is the best team. And again, Oregon may prove us wrong on that this week. But Penn State and Oregon could be similar. Penn State, if Oregon beats Ohio State, again, like I picked Oregon against the spread in this game, Ari. I don't know what Ohio State's going to look like against a team like this.
Well, okay, I'm just trying to do the math on this then. So you think that if Oregon wins the game that Penn State's going to beat Ohio State? Is that what your base is?
I think it means
math?
It's possible that Penn State can beat Ohio State.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty saucy take that they're not going to play twice.
Yeah. Now, and the other part of that is even if they don't play in the Big Ten championship game, there's still a possibility they play again.
Yeah. At first, I thought your saucy take was going to be that they're going to play 3 times, which would have been a really good one too. Because that's
no. I mean, that's certainly possible.
Yeah.
But I think we're just assuming we've picked these two teams as the best teams. They'll play this, and then they'll be on a collision course again for the Big Ten championship game. We've seen enough already this season in all of the leagues that our assumptions are going to go by the wayside these next months.
Yeah.
And I think we need to understand that. So don't assume that you're going to see this again. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. I mean, we saw Oregon Washington twice last year.
Yeah.
The first one was great. Maybe this will be a classic and then we'll get another one, but I don't think we should assume that. All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
And Penn State's doing a lot of heavy lifting there because they have to be
right. Yeah, I'm putting a lot on Penn State.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I'm also putting a lot on Indiana. All right, Ari. Let's move to another league. The loser of the LSU Ole Miss game is not making the playoff. They are eliminated. Even though mathematically they won't be, even though we've said a 10-2 SEC team can certainly get into the playoff. Whoever loses this game, gonna lose again, is not gonna make the playoff.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. This is mild. I think that this is an important game for both of these teams, and I know that we want to build up these games that are still between 2 one-loss teams. But I think that both of these teams have to come into this game, preparing for this as if it were a playoff game. I'm with you on this.
I think the schedule's too hard for both of them going forward to run the table for given what we've seen from these teams so far. And I'm curious what you think. Like if Ole Miss comes in and just scores like crazy on LSU, Because I don't know that LSU's defense is really built to stop.
Which is on the table. It's on the table. Yeah.
We saw Ole Miss do this to LSU last year, but obviously different defensive coordinator this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely on the table. And I like Ole Miss a lot in the game. So, and maybe part of that too is, and maybe in the offseason, Andy, you can go take me to a therapist so that I can let go of preseason notions once we get to halfway through the season. But I just am too bought in on what Ole Miss built from a roster standpoint this year. And if you would have told me before the year with looking at their schedule that they would have 2 losses by, the beginning of October, I would have been like, wow, what a terrible failed experiment. What the hell went wrong there? Like we are 3 days away from that potentially being a possibility. So like for me, I still believe that Ole Miss has a chance and maybe would go as far as saying a likelihood of making the playoff eventually. But as you illustrated on Monday's show, they've had a hard time in Tiger Stadium. They've had a hard time in Death Valley. And, they have lost to Kentucky already, so they could lose to anybody. Now, without Harold Perkins, LSU's defense, are they up to the challenge of being able to slow this team down? Because I still am I'm still on Ole Miss watch when it comes to just like randomly dropping 50 points on somebody. Like it's going to happen at some point because when that offense gets going and, the defense can't keep up with the individual skilled players that they have, like it's going to happen. Like, I think it's possible that we see Ole Miss win. Like you have this over under of 64.5. Like I think it could get there because Ole Miss is in the upper 40s.
Yeah. That's what happened last year. The difference was LSU had Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
And Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors. And I think Garrett Nussmeier is a good quarterback, but he's not Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
So you saw a shootout last year where if they let Ole Miss do that to them this year, they're going to lose and probably by a lot. So
yeah.
Goat Dog says the rest of the LSU schedule in a win-out situation is better than Ole Miss's schedule. Now, I agree that Ole Miss's schedule is not that easy because they have the at Arkansas, they have Oklahoma, at Arkansas, and Georgia. Like all of those games are losable. But let's throw up LSU's schedule again.
Yeah, that's tough, dude.
At Arkansas, at Texas A&M, Alabama, you ain't winning out against that. Not happening. You got to win.
And then maybe Oklahoma figures something out by the end of the year. Like that's not an easy game either.
And Vanderbilt isn't an automatic win anymore either. So
and don't forget about how intimidating the Swamp is, Andy. That one's a joke.
It is. It was very intimidating last week for UCF.
It's intimidating, but it might not be by then.
By then, things could be very, very different. So
let's remember, Florida's schedule turns into the worst thing I've ever seen. Like I feel bad
this week.
For Florida. Yeah,
this week. Yeah, it does. So I am very curious to see what happens in this game because I think that the takes will flow either way. Like we're either going to be, Ole Miss is making the playoff, and is this Brian Kelly thing going to work out at LSU, or is he out of his depth here? Or it's going to be Brian Kelly does it again, and Lane Kiffin's not making the playoff, and he can never win the big one, and they can't win in Baton Rouge. Like this is a take storm no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this is, and hopefully, with teams that are meeting on October 12th with a loss already, that even in this new system, that the meaning of the game is going to matter. Like I'm hoping that the loser of this game is going to feel like their season's over,
and probably will. They probably will feel like their season's over. Now that there is a chance that they could miraculously run the table, but you just saw those two schedules. Like, yeah, it's if you lose this game, you're gonna lose another one. Period. So I see in the chat that everybody's saying that's not saucy at all. Fine. I will redeem myself with this one. Plus, I had a very saucy one at the beginning. I will redeem myself with this one. Colorado will emerge as a contender for the Big 12 title this Saturday. Now, I picked Colorado against the spread in this game. I did not pick their Colorado money line to win. The more I think about it, though, the more I like the matchup for Colorado against Kansas State. But here's my thing, Ari. Colorado has not lost a Big 12 game. Kansas State has. Colorado essentially can eliminate Kansas State from Big 12 title contention, or at least put them in win or die mode. Colorado losing this game does not end Colorado's chances. And if Colorado is within a couple of points of Kansas State, they are in it. They're going to be in this Big 12 title conversation.
Would you say that this is the biggest game of the Deion era so far?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
In terms of like game in the conference that means something to where your season's going and it matters. You know what I mean? Like last year, they got off to a good start and there was some hype at the beginning of the year, but then they ended up losing like 6 or 7 in a row.
Yeah.
It didn't matter last year. We saw some improvement. We saw that Colorado was an interesting story, but from a football standpoint, it turned out to be a not very good football team. This year, I thought we were getting a lot of the same of what made Colorado go on that lose streak last year. And now, after what they did to UCF, and I think we're finding out that maybe UCF isn't very good, we're in a position where they're playing against a team that I thought was going to win the Big 12 before the year started. And if they come out with a win at home, and this is a night game, it's going to be like, I think that this is going to be a crazy game just because of the setting and the time it starts. And they win, like my entire thought process of like what Colorado can do in this conference changes. So, they already have a quarterback who's going to be selected in the first round of the NFL draft, and they have the best player in college football on their team. Like if they are able to exist on both sides of the ball on the lines and really control the game in a way that I didn't think was possible a month ago, then you have to start doing some math in your head of like the skill position talent on this team is better than most other teams in the Big 12 have. Their quarterback is dynamic and they're starting to feel good about themselves. Like I think that like your take to me sounded like you thought they were going to win. And then when you explained it,
I do think they might win, but I also think even if they're close, they're in it because K-State's already got the loss to BYU.
Because you're receiving it as this team is built to play with teams of this caliber.
And the thing is, like, we talk about the skill talent at Colorado. Where I think they did well in the portal is the edges, the defensive ends. That they are the ones that, and when you play teams that run read option, they're important. They're critical. If they can get pressure on Avery Johnson, or if they can make Avery Johnson make bad choices in the read option, then they're going to be in good shape. Now, what Baylor did to Avery Johnson was pressure him in ways that made him just kind of lose his mind. He threw 2 horrible interceptions in the BYU game, and that was what cost them the game, really. Or it's where the game got out of hand. But the other question is, can Colorado's interior offensive line hold up against Kansas State's D-line? Because that's where Nebraska got Colorado. Nebraska was coming straight up the middle. There was nothing Shedeur could do. But if they can hold up, because I don't think anybody in the Big 12 has what Nebraska has on the interior of the defensive line. I don't think anybody in the Big 12 has anything like that. Maybe Utah, but I definitely think if Shedeur has time, those receivers are going to get open against Kansas State. So we'll find out. But I mean, Ari, think about this. Because let's say Colorado wins this game. November 9th in Lubbock, Colorado at Texas Tech. That might be the biggest game in the Big 12 all year.
Yeah. I am cautiously optimistic, and I think that Colorado is probably pretty fortunate to not have to play Iowa State, because Iowa State probably mirrors more of what Nebraska is than anybody on their schedule here, right? Because Iowa State is kind of that like Midwestern tough team that actually has really good skill position players. So like they're a really good football team, and Colorado doesn't have to play them in the regular season. So here's what I'm going to say, and it's probably going to get clipped, and they're going to call me a Deion hater. I'm just going to say I'm cautiously optimistic about Colorado because I don't want to overreact to what happened in the UCF game. I still to this day don't know how they were 14.5 or 14-point dogs in that game to begin with, but they were. But I don't know that it's that insane to me to say that you think a team that's only a 5.5-point underdog can win a game or be close in a game. Like the spread is telling you it should be close.
Yeah.
So if they ended up winning this game, I would have to shift my thought process on what I thought Colorado was able to do this year. And that's where, So,
and I think the shift is you shift it to they can beat anybody in the league. Which, look, as Scott points out, a lot of teams look that way. How many teams in the Big 12 still have a shot? Texas Tech, BYU, Iowa State, Colorado, West Virginia. Remember, West Virginia's undefeated in Big 12 play.
In the Big 12.
So it doesn't necessarily mean we're saying they're going to win, but the fact of the matter is we went into the season thinking they were not capable of competing for the conference championship, and they can tell us this Saturday if they are or not. Yeah, and I am very excited to see that.
And I also think it's within the realm of possibility, too, that they lose by a lot, and that they are who we thought they were, too, at some point. So, yes, I think that Colorado is an inherently interesting discussion. They are entertaining as hell. I cannot wait to watch this with you. I think we might be watching it during the show. I'll get my iPad all set up over here on the table. But I don't, okay. I think I'm ready to rank your takes.
All right, let's do it.
I think number one is the Ohio State Oregon won't play again.
One time.
That was the sauciest take, I think. The Colorado take is the second sauciest. And then the Ole Miss-LSU one was not saucy at all. That was a dry one.
But here's the thing. The dry take is going to produce the sauciest takes out of the weekend.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, we're going to have some blazing, like, spicy ghost pepper takes off of whatever happens in this game. We will make massive assumptions.
And I understand what you were doing there. We had to talk about this a little bit because, I think that regardless of what happens, depending on what time does this game start at 7:30, maybe one of us will write one side and one of us will write the other because we're going to talk about it a lot. But when you think about that night window, Andy, we're going to the Red River game and then we're coming home and we've got this game. We've got the Colorado game coming on after. We got the Ohio State Oregon game. It's going to be one of these 4 a.m. nights. And, I'm here for it. So I
cannot think of a better way to spend it. I also can't think of a better way to spend my Thursday than by letting you guys take over the show. It is a Dear Andy and Ari show. Send us your questions. We've already gotten a few really good ones. You know how to find us. Andy_Staples, Twitter and Instagram. Ari Wasserman, Twitter and Instagram. AndyStaplesOn3@gmail.com if you have a longer question. Send them in. We will talk about them on Thursday. We will answer your questions. And also, hey, throw some questions into the chat. Come on and let us answer. But this is my favorite day of the week because I love how twisted our viewers and listeners' minds are. And they go places, Ari, where we don't necessarily always think about to go. But I'm telling you right now, having gotten a preview of some of these questions, this is going to be a fascinating discussion on Thursday. So send those questions in. We'll talk to you on Thursday.